had great pleasure of speaking with my old friend Caleb White. He's not old, I am. Um, but you're still looking like a youngster there, Caleb.
No, 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 not at all. Is this background okay, Wayne?
Yeah, it's great.
Oh,
It's
cool.
fine. Yeah.
All right.
So, Caleb, tell us a little bit about how it was that you came to Mowgli.
Well, I was fortunate because my older brother George, who I don't know, I can't remember whether he went by Boomy in at Mowgli or not. He may have, but he had gone to Mowgli for 3 years before I did, and I think we found out about Mowgli because way back when my uncle went to Pasquani, and I think he sort of said, "Well, maybe Pasquani's not your thing," to my mother, but your boys might enjoy Mowgli. That was the camp across the way. So one thing led to another. My brother in his Baloo year was the coxswain for winning Blue Racing Crew, and I think he had. It was so wonderful to see your recent interview of Eric Adele, because Eric Adele and my brother were very good friends in his den, and so I really followed my brother to Mowgli, and what was neat um, is uh, the relationship I had with my brother while at Mowgli was probably closer than it was able to be even at school when we went to the same schools. And eventually, some of my brother's friends, like David Bonner and Peter Phillip, who came to Mowgli at my brother's sort of suggestion, they ended up just being good mentors to me. So I was very lucky to have that as soon as I showed up.
Well, as I recall, you jumped right into things. I mean, you developed a reputation early on as a boy of substance. What was it like? What was it like to sort of be in the shadow of your older brother?
He made it. He was supportive. I mean, I was thinking, and just thinking about what stories to share with you, Wayne. But I mean, he you know, I know he loved you and taught me to love you as a counselor, and he had great appreciation for Bill Hart, for Phil, for Andy Poppenshock. So there was sort of just an ease to my getting to know both staff and campers. Not that I mean, my presence once I was at Mowgli was probably a bit bigger than my brother's, but my brother was a well-liked citizen of Mowgli, right? And a kind person. And I remember my first year there when Tom Skolko and Morgan Reese were like the tennis kids of that dorm, and they were doing a campfire, and it was sort of orchestrated that, oh well, let's let Caleb, who I was going for my yellow ribbon that year, we'll let him play against Tom and beat Tom and win a candy bar, right? And I mean, it was all sort of, you know, because I was George's little brother, and that was not a bad thing. That was a good thing. So it's easy now to sort of know that, hey, he was looking out for me, but he also had some Denites that were his, also looking out for me. So it made it easy, I think, to come in maybe with a little wind in my sails.
What dorm did you start out in?
In Baloo, I started in Baloo.
In Blue. So he was 3 years ahead of you. So that means he was in the den that year.
Yeah, we only overlapped that one year. That's correct. Yep.
Uh-huh. That's so you came to a camp where he was considered, sort of among the upper echelon of the boys.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
Well,
and you did it with aplomb.
well, he made it he made it easy, I think. He made it easier because he could have I could have become the pin cushion and that certainly didn't feel like the way I was sort of let in. And any worries of being homesick or anything like that, you know, there was uh he was very caring that way. Much more so than at Mowgli than sometimes at school.
Looking after you. That's
Yep.
good. The stories are not always the same. Sometimes there's competition, more competition. Sometimes there's more collaboration.
Yeah, well, this was very much one of collaboration. Yep.
Uh-huh. And what do you remember from your first year?
Yeah, I mean, I was very fond memory. I remember I was the industries I took were tennis and canoeing and um, the canoeing instructor because I got my red ribbon the next year with Wayne King. There was a British, I think his name was Michael Lee or Matthew Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Was so I did get to do that Androscoggin trip 2 years in a row, and I think actually, even though you didn't um, teach Red Ribbon that year, I think you accompanied that trip, and I learned about crawdads for the first time, and we went out catching crawdads with flashlights and boiling them up, and you know that was a really special moment of that year. I ended up winning the tennis tournament, beating an acolyte, which was a big deal. I think I beat George Beavers, I think was his name, was the acolyte because and I got my yellow ribbon, so that was important to me. And we had a really good dorm, and some people stayed through the den and others did not, but Brooke Millard did not, but he and I were good friends. And I think Brooke only stayed Baloo and Aquila, but he played a lot of tennis. Jim Cohen played tennis. And as you know from your conversation with Greg, I mean, Greg and I and his cousin Tim Gleason, you know, we were all we had some really great campers, Eddie Gassarero, Adrian Gamal. Many of them were also starting in Baloo. So I didn't sort of feel like I was too much of a newcomer.
It was a great bunch that you were with. I know that I think I've shared with you a photograph that I took of you on top of Stairs Mountain looking out at Crawford, or on Crawford looking out at Stairs. I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
sure which, but yeah, that's definitely one of my treasured photographs from
that's a
those days.
classic. That's a great photo. Yeah.
Yep.
And the camp was at a with the staff, I mean, I was sort of going over it. I mean, I had the pleasure in my years, and it wasn't, different years had different staff members, but Rick and Bob Bengston were on staff. I had at least 1 year with Andy Poppenshock, a number of years with you, number of years with Paul Brown, both Gehrings, John Mukad. Um, uh, one of the Foyers, I think it was Chuck Foyer, but I can't remember now that I've gotten involved on the board. The Foyers all sort of blended into one another. But I think it was Charlie Foyer.
Yep.
Um, and then Mr. Phil was a big presence. And I also loved singing, right? So Mowgli was, to be able to sort of come in and see singing in all sorts of different forms, um, from the traditional camp songs to the East Hebron Madrigal Society to Wayne King at the campfire. Those were all really important and memorable parts of my
And
time.
as I recall, you were also in the Mowgli Club.
I was definitely in the Mowgli Club. Yes, very much so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, uh, so your first year, was that your first experience of camping?
Well, it's so interesting because I had it was my first year of camping, but I had been to a baseball camp for 3 weeks the year before, so what would have been my year. And I mean, I don't think I've ever gotten in fights in my life, really, other than, in 3 weeks at Ted Williams baseball camp, I got in two fights. I mean, it goes to, sometimes you need a break. Sometimes the environment is one where you're needing to be in a position to sort of defend yourself or not. And so I'd gone to the baseball camp. I'd never really done any camping. And then came to Mowgli and loved the camping aspect of it. But I loved, I mean, there were a few things I didn't love about Mowgli.
Yeah. But as I recall, you excelled when it came to just not only your ability as a hiker, but your camaraderie, as a member of the team and of the dorm on the trail, doing count offs and
Yep, count off, singing, you know, trying to pick people up. Yeah,
yeah,
that's been a bit of a, I tend to bring energy where I go, as what I've been accused of that much of my life.
that's a nice thing to be accused of.
Yeah,
You were the guy who always reached back and helped the kid who was struggling.
I tried. That's
Not
what I
always the way you were, or did you just find yourself in that environment that brought that out in you?
I think Mowgli was very formative for me in that regard, and it was very different than the school I was going to in New York City, because that's where I was going to school, was all boys, very competitive, um, you know, always, uh, uh, you knew your ranking in your class, on the test that just happened. It was very competitive, um, and so I don't think I think Mowgli had a lot to do with my sort of being a much more empathetic person than I was before I came to Mowgli.
Yeah. Did you have was there any trouble convincing your folks to send you away for that long?
No, my mother had been to Onaway,
Uh,
and she was joining the board. I think she was the first female board trustee, one of the maybe either the first or one of the first. I think she may have been the first. And she had known Onaway and loved Onaway. Um, so that wasn't, even though we had a pretty great sort of place to spend summers and on the shore in Connecticut. Um, it wasn't my parents' busiest part of their life was in the summer because my dad's theater was always busiest in the summer.
mhm.
So we wouldn't, I think it was smart because we wouldn't have seen a lot of my parents. They were always sort of on, and it worked out really well.
Your mom was a woman of real substance.
Yes, and she's still alive. Both my parents
Oh,
are
that's
still
great.
alive. Yeah, and
Please give them my best wishes.
yeah, I will, Wayne. And she certainly remembers Mowgli very well.
You know. Well, I have a little story to tell you about my experience when my son first went to Mowgli.
Oh, yes, I'd love to hear that.
I had 2 years of gradually convincing my wife that this was the right thing to do, to give up her little boy for 7 weeks during the summer, when, when every parent believes that they'll dedicate all kinds of time to their kids, but is most of the time deceiving
Yeah,
themselves.
that's right. That's right.
But uh, Zach finally went to Mowgli in Tumai, and he came back. He came back from Mowgli at the end of the summer, and um, it- Alice and I went to the very first parent-teacher conferences at the school, and he's the teachers, almost every single teacher said, "What happened to this boy this summer?"
Wow.
Back
Wow. That's neat. That's
with
really neat.
such confidence, and then they told me this story about a field day at the school, when the one kid who was kind of heavy set and having trouble finishing the race that he was in, um, was struggling at the end when he had a couple of laps left.
Yeah.
And Zach jumped into the race. He wasn't a runner, but he ran beside this boy, just kind of coaxing him along, telling him he could do it, and it was just so impressive.
Wow. And he would have been probably 10 or 11 years old
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah,
It's
10
amazing.
years
It's
old.
wonderful.
Yep. So, and now he's a absolutely fearless kayaker and rock climber living out in Colorado.
Oh, is he? Wow. Fabulous. Where in Colorado does he live?
Well, he's in the Four Corners region, a town called Mancos,
Okay. Okay.
which is, uh, I forget the nearest. The nearest town is a very well-known town, but I can't think of it offhand. He just bought his first house, and
Oh, congrats to him and to you. That's
yeah. So anyway, that's my story of the first summer for my boy, and then he went on to be the stroke of the red racing crew, the winning red racing crew 3 years in a row.
oh wow, Wayne.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
wow. That's yeah, I it was I have four children, only one who could have gone to Mowgli. And he's a wonderful kid, thankfully. All my kids are pretty darn great kids. But we were living in England at what would have been sort of the entry time for Mowgli. And as you probably know, the European school systems, they don't end until the second week of July.
right, right.
And so um, it just became unfortunate, but that my son couldn't attend Mowgli. I've often talked with Nick Robbins, however, because my middle daughter sounds a little bit like your Zach. She actually leads bike trips and hiking trips for a company called Backroads. They do,
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah,
and she met somebody, oh, I'm going to forget his name. I'm going to be embarrassed on this tape. Somebody who worked at the High Mountain Institute out in Colorado, a recent staffer. Um, and so she, for her to hear about Mowgli, not just from dad, but from this other staffer who probably was on Nick's staff for about 5 years, and I'm just
yeah.
forgetting his name. I'll remember it. But we've got to get her up to Mowgli one of these days. If not as a counselor, if nothing else, just to see it and to experience a little bit
Yeah.
of it.
Now, what about the most memorable trips that you did while you were at Mowgli?
Um, well, I loved both my the Gopher Squad trip in Panther, and then we had a memorable, albeit a little bit of a problematic uh, mountain squad trip my den year. Um, so those are memorable for different. I always love the Mahoosuc trip. I don't know.
Yeah,
Does Mowgli still do? I think you were Tripmaster when we did the Mahoosuc trip, and that was just a lovely,
right.
lovely trip.
Yeah, I think they still do it. The year that I ran for governor and got my clock cleaned, I did a solo trip with my dog and the Mahoosucs afterwards just to recover my sanity.
Actually, I have a funny story about you, Wayne. So I must have been, you'll remember, you'll probably have it in your keepsake somewhere. But I'm not thinking about Mowgli. I'm probably 20, 21, 22. And I think I'm in a dentist office or something. And I don't know why I would ever have bothered to look at the Wall Street Journal, right? Because, that typically wouldn't have been my go-to. But there I go. I pick it up and it's talking about this guy, Wayne King, who is leading these presidential candidates around New Hampshire. And I'm like, I know that Wayne King. So I don't know. I don't remember exactly the timing of it. You probably, but I think you were on the front page of the
Yeah,
journal.
it was. They even had one of those little pixelated
That's
pictures.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty neat. That's
So
pretty.
I think I heard from you afterwards about that. I think you somehow reached out and let me know you had seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
So yeah, those trips I remember, and as I said, I remember the canoe trips well. I miss it because I haven't done much kayaking or canoeing since Mowgli, although I certainly loved it there.
What happened on the Mount Washington squad trip?
You'll probably have heard rumors of this, and I don't think Greg. So do you remember Merle Stinnett?
Yeah.
So I mean, he had Vim and Vigor from VMI,
Oh, yeah.
and we were out at a VMI pace, shall we say. We
Uh-huh.
were we weren't just going to do Mount Washington, we were going to do it at a rigorous pace. And Bill Howard, who was part of my den and sadly passed away, um, Bill fell, and I think he ended up breaking a wrist on that trip. And but Bill was you know, basically wasn't going to let some broken wrist get in his way. But it was uh, um, in hindsight, we probably should have addressed things a bit differently.
Hmm. As I recall, I did not go on that.
No, you didn't. It was Bob. It was Bob Bengston remembers that trip because Bob was on it.
Right. And I think it was because it wasn't that I had a particular dislike for Merle Stinnett, but our styles were so different.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I think up to that point, Merle had a wonderful, you know, time being a counselor at
right.
Mount. That was just that needed a little bit of a sensitive touch in terms of the approach to the Mount Washington. It wasn't just about being the top squad.
Yeah. But did you enjoy staying in the huts and
Oh yeah, love staying in the huts. Um, that was very memorable. Um, and just I loved. I mean, Greg and I worked with you on getting our wolf's paw that summer,
yep.
and so we got to do a lot of pretty neat, sort of different things as we worked towards that award.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I recall a night trip up Cardigan as well.
Yep, yep. I
Sleeping,
mean, that was special, right? That was special because it was different.
yeah. I mean, it was like you're on the summit of Cardigan and all the stars are shining and it's like being on the moon.
Yep,
Yeah, yeah. Well, for years after, I would run into people who had been, uh, hut boys and hut girls in various huts, and I would mention Mowgli to them, and they would always say, "Boy, those boys were so helpful, in the kitchen. They nobody had to ask them to volunteer. They just came in, grabbed a dish towel, and said, 'What can I do?'"
yeah. Well, I think that is core to Mowgli, and I'm sure that remains, um, a hallmark of Mowgli campers. I mean, I think it's so fun being on the board now and seeing what Nick has done, with now being the director for 10 years. I mean, it was quite the honor to be able to give Nick a few years ago his own, um, graduate medal or yeah, that's what we called them, right? Graduate.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
graduate. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
He's been an extraordinary person.
Extraordinary. Yep. We're very, very lucky.
There are, yeah, you know, Bill Hart, of course, was the person that we knew in our early days. But he, I think, has really, he is of the same mold
Yep.
as Bill Hart. Uh, yeah. And
I
speaking
don't
of
think he plays the piano as well, but other than that, we won't hold it against him.
speaking of Phil Hart, though, I call Phil's phone number once every 2 or 3 weeks. In the early hour. I change the hours, hoping that he's going to pick up that phone so that eventually I can catch him
Oh, I hope you do.
to
I
do
hope you do.
it'll have to be a telephone only podcast, but that so many people have asked about that. And I think you will.
Phil was an important part of my coming back because I wasn't sure after my Panther year. I was like, oh, what? And then I talked to Phil and we talked about, well, maybe you could go for your wolf's paw. And then Greg and I sort of talked about it. And boy, am I so glad it's sort of, because I had accomplished at least the initial things I had set out to do by sort of Aquila and Panther year, like Inner Circle and things like that. And then, you don't realize until you're in your den year what, being the leading camp dorm and the responsibility both ways that goes with that. And so I'm so glad I came back to Mowgli my den year. And I remember at the end of my Panther year talking with Phil, and he really, not in a pressure way, just in a, talk it through way. He really helped me sort of get reinvigorated to come back the following year.
Yeah, he was. Phil and I had sort of a love-hate thing going the whole time that I was on the staff there. And I mean, but ultimately, he is one of the people at Mowgli of whom I am most fond.
Yeah, I could,
And he had this sense of humor, and he had this. He was a jokester, but most people didn't see it
yep.
because
Very dry, very dry, but fun sense of humor.
yeah, yeah.
And my brother appreciated that about Phil as well. I wasn't on the trip, maybe you were, but there was something about Kenwood trucks. I don't know whether that's come up in any of your interviews, maybe Raoul Hoekstra or someone like that. But for some reason, they went on some trip and for some reason they all came back, you know, all praying to the Kenwood truck gods or whatever. And this was also about the same time that they were all channeling Russian, the Russian accent, much like I know you did a great sort of Russian. Um, well, and you did the Czech Brothers with Paul, right? That's
The
one of
Zamboni brothers,
the
yes.
Zamboni brothers. That's right, the
Yeah,
Zamboni brothers.
yeah,
God, I remember that. That was always funny.
yes, it was. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. It was a great way to get junior staff involved too.
Yep,
So they
yep.
all look forward to, that this was the one thing during the course of the summer that they could probably get on get on with and would give them some prestige.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. I could see that. I tried to. I haven't seen Paul, but I've heard about Paul because I was doing some work in Stowe, Vermont, and I popped my head in a couple of times into his red apple mill.
Yeah,
But I unfortunately he wasn't there when I've tried to see him. But um, my understanding is he's doing great out there, and um, I work with the Von Trapp family out there a little bit, and they know him from the ski slopes.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, he started out over in Maine at Sugarloaf
Oh, okay.
and ended up over in Stowe. And yeah, I popped in to see him a couple of times at the I guess it was mostly apple cider
Yeah, cider donuts
and uh,
and the like. Yep.
it was a great operation.
Yeah. No, it seems like it was doing well when I was there a couple of years ago. So.
Yeah, yeah. So, uh, any other staff members that were particularly memorable to you as you went through Mowgli? You
I mean,
mentioned Andy Pop and Chalk. I mean,
Andy, I only got to spend 1 year with. My Aquila year, he was the green. I got my green ribbon from Andy. He wasn't there my blue year, but I know my brother had always talked about him, and so
mm,
I was really excited to learn from him. I don't th maybe I only did one, like I didn't really do a lot of trips with Andy. I think he may have been with more Den and Panther.
yeah, he would have been the Tripmaster, I think, probably.
Yeah. But the Garings were, they were very, I mean, just to hear and see the incredible slides that Lee and Chuck took of their trips away from Mowgli through the Canadian Rockies, and
Yeah,
um, I remember those campfires greatly. I remember your campfires. Um,
yeah,
uh, and let's see if there are other. Um, those were those were I think the Bengtons always you know left I still remember a lot of meaningful conversations with Rick and with Bob. So
did you ever end up on Mr. Hart's porch from his?
uh, I didn't, but I did get in some trouble when I was a counselor a few years later. So after I graduated from Den, I then I took a couple of years off and I came back and was the yellow ribbon instructor, and that was a really fun summer. Mr. Hart was still the director, and on my tennis staff were both Bill Tweedy, who's now on the board. He and I are on the board together, and Jason Sprung, who I know Bill continues to stay with, and Jason was always such a great sort of personality. And I remember ending up on, well, getting a talking to from Mr. Hart after what had been a very successful summer, but I took a few liberties keeping the camp van out an extra hour or so, and when I got back, Mr. Hart was waiting for me in the parking lot. Let's just put
Oh, really?
it. He knew exactly when I was pulling in. Eyes in the back of his head, I think.
Yeah, well, and there was nothing worse than disappointing Bill Hart.
Right? No, that's right. That's right. It was definitely. Oh, Pete St. John, I remember, because he and I were on the staff. So Pete was also somebody who I really appreciated. He and I had great times together as staff, and I remember him. Maybe he was more junior staff when I was in Den, but um, I remember him doing a great Louis Armstrong, a great Satchmo uh,
Yeah,
impression on Saturday nights for everybody.
he was one of those classic camp counselors that if you were going to write a book about camp,
Yep,
you'd use him as a character.
absolutely would. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I remember Jeff Shaw.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, Jeff Shaw.
I saw a nice write-up in the Howl or something about Jeff, 5 or 6 years ago. I was like, Jeff was just such a steady, and you appreciate it now as you get older, but all the things that could go wrong at the waterfront, and Jeff just ran such a great tight ship at the waterfront.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't, I mean, when you're the director of Mowgli, the two things that you worry about most are the waterfront and
And
the
trips. Yeah.
mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you almost, I mean, you it's almost inevitable that over a period of time you're going to have some mountain incidents,
Yeah.
um, but you never want to have one at the waterfront.
Yeah.
It's just I can remember times when kids forgot to check out, and then you had counselors like in the water with face masks and
Yeah.
looking to make sure that they hadn't lost that kid while someone else was up.
Up looking all over the dorms. Yep. Yep.
I was, I I'm sure that parents think about that kind of stuff when they're making decisions about camps, but really, I never, I never felt that there wasn't great attention paid to detail at Mowgli when it came to the safety of boys.
I think that's right. And I think that was part of, as you said before, the standard that, Bill Hart set. Um, and the other person who ended up being an important influence in my life that I met through Mowgli was Colonel Hill. And it was, again, Colonel Hill was never really a full-time staff member, but I think he got to know me. I think he knew my mom through the board. And I think, in the week or so that he would be around camp, he'd sort of noticed perhaps some campers more than others, but, um, I had never really met somebody with a military background. And so it was interesting to just sort of hear some of his colonel colonel stories.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that was really interesting for
Well,
me.
I don't recall uh, what specific battle it was that he was, a major force in during World War II. But Frank Punderson used to talk about it all the time that, that he was, uh, that he had played a massive role. And I hope that somebody has um, done some research that will allow us to put that in the Mowgli
Do you
archive.
remember what his first name is? Maybe I'll do a little research. I don't remember. Was it John Hill? No,
Yep,
it was John Hill. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll see if I can dig up something.
yeah.
Do you remember where he was from? Was it Virginia area or
I think he was from Virginia, but you know who would know all that is Bob Benson. He would,
Bobwood? Yeah, that's right. Okay.
and you know, we've all been working, pushing Bob, trying to get him to write a history, a Mowgli history. I'm sure that you've got stories about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll start getting it to happen. I know the board's thinking about it too, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, Bob's got more stories in his head than
Oh,
anybody else that I can think of.
right. I mean, you guys, your den was 72? What was
60,
your
69.
69? 69. Yep. So 10 years older than mine then. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
And, you know, like for a while, I was like having lunches with Bob and, but he kept wanting to be off the record, you know, though he would let me, record our lunches. And I mean, he just has just a ton of great stories. I have to tell you this one story that he told.
I'll have to, after you tell me this story, I'll have to encourage him because when I tell you sort of what my day job is now, some of these stories are important. So you tell me the story first.
You remember do you remember the Russell sisters? These two old ladies who would always, well, there was Mrs. Gibbs who would sew ribbons on hats and
Yeah,
stuff.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there were the Russell sisters who had been friends with Mrs. Holt. And
Okay.
I think one of them, I'm not sure whether it was Mary or Ruth, had actually been the dietitian for Mowgli when Mrs. Holt had been director, and then for Colonel Elwell as well.
Okay.
You
Cool.
know, if you were to remember them, they would have been very old, and they would sit at the back of the hall, you know, on Saturday nights if they came. But
Yep.
one of them went blind in her elder years, and as it happened, I think it was Ruth that went blind, but don't hold me to that. But the at any rate, she was the only one who could operate a lawnmower. So Mary, who could see,
Would
would walk
tell,
would walk beside her and give her directions. Steer a little to the right, dear.
oh, that would be a sight to see, huh?
And that's how
Oh, that's
long
hysterical.
on at their place on the north end of the lake.
Oh, wow.
Oh God.
And I'm sure Bob probably helped them out until their deaths.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course, Myron Bray, they were related, I
I
think.
do remember Myron. I remember Myron. Yeah. I remember Myron.
He was quite a guy.
Yeah, so one of the things I do now is I help family businesses, and many of the family businesses I help are, 75 years old, 100 years old, and in part it's because I come from a family business that's 190 years old. And my great grandfather started in 1836. So, one of the things that is so valuable to the traditions and the legacies of these business and some of the things that make these businesses great is the ability to capture the stories, right? Whether it be written or video or and so often I'm encouraging my clients, you got to get it down on paper, you got to interview them, and then sometimes they do, but boy, when they don't, and then somebody passes, it's so tragic. So
Yeah. Well, I think of I watched a couple of days ago. I watched Ken Burns talking about his new documentary of the Revolutionary War, and that's he said, you know, that's how we communicate best with one another. That is telling our stories.
Yep.
And he's absolutely right. He says that's how we're going to get out of this mess we're in now. We're going to tell each other stories until they start to coincide.
Yeah, I think I'll have to look at that. That's a great, I see that, oral tradition,
Yeah. Yeah. So let's hope it happens sooner rather than later.
Let's hope so, Wayne. We really
So,
hope.
okay. So if you were to summarize what it is about Mowgli that made Caleb White the person that he has become in life, what would it, how would you, how would you do that?
Tough, tough question in 10 words, right? No, I think Mowgli created an environment um, that allowed you to sort of go out, pursue interests of all different kinds, right? I mean, the school of the open, it's such the right, you know, um, description and name of Mowgli because, um, I mean, I was, you know, I didn't feel like I needed to narrow my interests. Instead, I could be curious and just, and that curiosity and that diversity was also embodied in the staff. So, you could have, um, the Iron Man on the one hand, but you could have the gentle soul on the other hand, right? And at a, I think it's really, um, so when I think about who I've become, I hope that what people would say about me is that um, I have a lot of different interests and I have a curiosity that continues now that I'm 60 and just I pursue those interests with the same, maybe not quite the same alacrity I used to have, but still energetically. And I think it's because Mowgli made that possible and enjoyable.
Well, I can truly say that of all the people that I've known at Mowgli, you are among the people that I think most defines the the sense of self-confidence and camaraderie that Mowgli is all about. And it's been a real pleasure, Caleb, talking with you today.
Well, Wayne, thank you. I'm so glad we got to do this, and I'll see you at Crew Day, I
You
hope.
bet.
All
Good
right.
hunt, good hunting, my friend.
Good hunting. All right, Wayne, be well. Bye-bye.